Hello everyone, peace be upon you. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and stay with me until the end of the story. Also, leave a comment telling me which city and country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my story has reached. For those of you who have already subscribed, I sincerely wish you good health, ease in all your affairs, abundant blessings, and may all your hopes and dreams come true. Amen. Now, let's begin the story. Dawn crept over Fort Breakwater Naval Base, turning the shoreline into a strip of cold silver. The wind was sharp, the kind that made eyes water even before the first order barked across the sand. Recruits lined up shoulder to shoulder on the wet edge of the Silverstrand Coastline, boots sinking, packs tight, faces set. At the far end of the formation stood Avery Caldwell. To anyone looking, she was just another tired rookie bracing for Steel Week. Her posture was straight, hands steady at her sides, eyes calm like she'd seen this 100 times before. Chief Hank Porter paced in front of them with a whistle and a stare that could crack concrete. "Welcome to the part of your life you'll remember in detail when you're 80, he said. "Move when I say move. Think later." His whistle cut the air. The line broke into a sprint, straight into the freezing surf. The Pacific swallowed sound, the cold hit like a punch. Some cursed under their breath. One stumbled and went under. Avery turned, grabbed his vest, and yanked him back to his feet without a word, guiding his breathing until his eyes stopped panicking. Ryan Maddox splashed past with a smirk. "Keep up, rookie," he muttered. Avery didn't answer. She just set a pace that didn't slow, didn't lunge, didn't waste. When the wave hit, she leaned into it and kept moving. By the time Porter's whistle dragged them back to shore, Ryan was coughing seawater and trying not to show it. Push-ups, flutter kicks, squats in soaked uniforms. Sand stuck to forearms and necks. Avery kept her count clean. No struggle in her breathing, no drama in her face. Elias Monroe caught that, side-eyeing her with a quiet nod before refocusing on Porter's cadence. From a tent near the dunes, Captain Douglas Shaw watched through binoculars, saying nothing, just tracking small details, who glanced around for help, who steadied others without being asked, who burned hot and then faded. Mid-morning brought log PT-6 to a team, hands under rough timber, shoulders burning. Ryan took the center and called the cadence like he owned it. The log wobbled. Feet tangled. Porter's voice snapped across the wind. "That log doesn't care about your ego." Avery shifted her grip by an inch, lowered her knees, and said, low enough for their team to hear, "Step together. Don't fight the weight." The wobble leveled out. They carried farther than the team next to them without dropping. Ryan noticed, didn't comment, but the tightness in his jaw said enough. Lunch was rations eaten on cold metal steps outside Echo 9 training compound. No one really tasted anything. Elias sat nearby, rolling his shoulders. "You from the coast?" he asked. "You don't blink at cold water." "Something like that," Avery said, keeping it light. Across the courtyard, Shaw and Porter spoke in short sentences, eyes drifting to the teams, then back to a clipboard neither of them needed to read. Afternoon turned the sand into a griddle. Obstacle course, rope climbs, vaults over plywood walls. A recruit clipped his knee and stalled on a cargo net, choking on frustration as much as fatigue. Avery was below him before Porter could shout, set his boot, guided his next foothold with a steady, flat voice. He cleared the lip, shaky but intact. No high fives. No speeches. Just motion. As the sun slipped lower, the wind picked up again. The final task of the day was a silent 5-mile ruck at the waterline. No talking, no breaking formation. Packs at 50. Ryan took point like always. Elias drifted near Avery. The tide tugged at their boots. The rhythm of steps and waves settled into a steady drum. When a younger recruit's shoulder slumped, Avery took a sliver of his weight with a hand under the strap and kept the pace from breaking. Ryan glanced back once, saw the adjustment, and faced forward. They finished in a hard line. Porter's whistle blew. "Not terrible," he said. Which, from him, was a compliment. Dusk rolled over the base in thin purple. In the barracks, the air smelled like salt and boot leather. Blisters were drained with pins heated by lighters. Someone laughed for 3 seconds and then fell asleep mid-sentence. Ryan sat on the edge of his bunk, rubbing his calves, side-eyeing Avery across the aisle. "You don't talk much," he said. "Talking doesn't lower your time," she answered. He smirked and looked away, but he was listening. Lights out didn't bring quiet in Avery's head. She lay back and counted the beats of the ceiling fan, tracking the day in quick clips, who faltered, who recovered, where the group's rhythm broke under pressure, where it held. Outside, waves hit the shore in the same steady pattern. Steel Week was designed to erase the distance between intention and action. The ones who lasted learned to stay calm when the floor dropped. The ones who didn't never figured out that calm isn't a personality. It's a decision you make again and again. Before sleep finally reached her, a gust rattled the barracks door and carried a thin mist through the cracks. Tomorrow would be colder, and the drills would hit harder. Porter would make sure of it. Shaw would keep watching. Ryan would push faster than he could hold. Elias would keep that steady gear and find a new one when he had to. And Avery would be where she had been all day, one row back from the front, doing exactly what needed to be done, no more, no less, with her eyes open and her cover intact, for now didn't last long. Before the first hint of light, Porter slammed the barracks door and sent them straight to the surf, no coffee, no warm-up, just shock. The water was black and loud. They linked arms and lay back into the cold, waves covering faces, salt burning eyes and noses. "Breathe steady," Porter yelled from the shore. "If you can't control your breath, you can't control anything." A recruit 2 down from Avery started shaking hard. She turned her head and spoke low, just enough. "In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Slow." He found the rhythm and kept his hand down. The bell on the beach stayed silent. They rolled into sand, covered head to toe, then were sent running with packs across the Silverstrand. Ryan took the front again, pushing the pace like the course was a rival. He gained 10 yards, then lost 15 when a soft pocket of sand ate his stride. "Hold cadence," Avery called to the line, not loud, not a command, just practical. The pack tightened. Ryan looked back once and kept running. By mid-morning, Echo 9 turned into a grinder. Log drags, buddy carries, then the crawl under wire strung low enough to shave noses. Elias moved smooth, always the same tempo. A younger kid got tangled, panic rising at the wire's rattle. Avery slid beside him, showed the elbow-knee rhythm with 2 clean cycles, and he copied it out. Porter didn't praise, but he didn't blow the whistle either. Shaw watched from the shade, arms folded, eyes unreadable. After Chow came the one everyone dreaded, drown-proof. Hands tied, feet tied, into the pool, survive the cycle. Some went first and did fine until the part where you have to bob, float, recover a line with your teeth, and touch the wall without thrashing. Ryan was paired near Avery. He covered the first minute strong, then the burn hit. His shoulders twitched, his eyes jumped to the surface, and the panic switch flipped. He kicked too fast, sucked water, and rose too quick. Avery rotated in the water, bumped him with her shoulder, and held him down just long enough to break the rush. He stared wide, saw her eyes steady, and matched her slow bob. They surfaced on pace and finished the cycle. When the ropes came off, he hung on the edge, pretending he wasn't shaking. "Lucky timing," he said. "No," she answered, "basic control." He didn't have a comeback. The afternoon range was about breath and trigger. Moving targets in the mock village, smoke thick enough to sting. Porter ran them hot, changing lanes, calling malfunctions. Elias missed a plate, reset, and hit clean on the second. Ryan tried to outrun the drill and clipped a no-shoot. Porter's head snapped. Speed without brain is wasted ammo. Avery cleared a doorway, pie-sliced it by the book, and kept it moving. Nothing flashy. Just correct. At dusk, the teams formed on the beach for the silent ruck. Wind picked up and the sky went gray fast. The pace was steady until the smallest recruit went awkward on a step and rolled an ankle off a hidden rock. He bit down on a yell and grabbed for balance. Ryan started to wave him off. He'll catch up or ring out. Avery stopped, slid under the kid's strap, took some load, and never broke cadence. Sprain, she said, calm. He walks it in. The line closed ranks and kept time. When they hit the marker, Porter checked his watch and nodded once. Better. In the barracks, the mood shifted. Fewer sideways comments. More quiet repairs. Elias taped his ankle and looked over. You always this clean under stress. Clean saves time, Avery said. Ryan sat across, rolling a lacrosse ball under his foot, eyes fixed on nothing. After a minute, he said, not to anyone in particular, you slipped your ropes fast. Avery didn't look up. Practice. He clicked his tongue. Rookies don't have that practice. No one argued with him, but no one joined him either. Lights went down, but the rest didn't stick. The day's noise rang in bones. Pipes clicked. The fan hummed. Outside, the ocean hit the shore in an even drum. Avery lay still and ran the inventory again, who steadied others, who drifted when it got loud, where the team's angles broke in the mock village, where the cadence cracked on the ruck. She wrote quick lines in a small notebook under the blanket, tight script, no fluff. Cohesion improving. Ego points softening. Maddox, strong engine, burns hot, recovers with external cue. Monroe, reliable baseline, coachable. Overall morale, up. She capped the pen and stared at the ceiling. A gust pushed a thin mist through the cracked window and chilled the room. Tomorrow would bring the raft carries and the combat scenario. The plan never said it, but everyone knew the tempo would jump. Porter would sharpen the edge. Shaw would keep his distance. Ryan would test every limit in front of him. Elias would keep the glue. And Avery would hold the line one step behind the front, calm and exact, ready to correct the small things before they became fails. The cover was still intact, but the questions had a pulse now, steady and growing. It was only a matter of when, not if, someone would say what the room had started to feel. She didn't move like a rookie at all, and the next day proved it before breakfast. Porter had them on boat crews at first light, rubber rafts overhead, sprinting the wet edge of Silverstrand. Wind hammered, shoulders burned, and the sand grabbed ankles like hands. Ryan barked cadence until his voice thinned. Elias kept the crew straight without saying much, adjusting grip, shifting weight. Avery watched angles and speed, called a tight, down, up only when the raft drifted, and the team snapped back in sync like it had a hinge. Porter's whistle cut. Stow it. Range in 10. Echo 9's mock village smelled like gun oil and plywood. Smoke pots bled white into the alleys. Porter laid it out fast, hostage rescue lanes, changing sectors, live fire with strict no-shoots. You break discipline, you're done. You breathe wrong, you're done. Shaw stood back at the catwalk with a headset, expression flat. The team stepped off in staggered order. Ryan took point for theirs, Avery at the second slot, Elias watching back angles. First doorway, clean. Second, tight slice, 2 reds, 1 drop steel. Avery tapped Ryan's elbow once when his muzzle drifted too high, no drama, and the shot string tightened. They flowed past a barricade into a narrow corridor where the light went strange, flicker, then dark, then a hiss from above. Avery smelled it before she saw it. Not smoke pot sweet, but sharp, chemical. Mask up, she said, calm, though this lane wasn't listed for irritant. Ryan hesitated half a second, then saw her pull hers and followed. Elias was already sealed. Gunfire cracked from a second-story window that wasn't part of the plan. The angles were wrong, cadence off from standard pop-ups. Ryan ducked, swore. Targets went live. Avery scanned up, tracking muzzle flash gaps. That's not automated. She rolled to a cutout, returned 2 controlled bursts to cover the team's slide into hard corner. Porter's voice hit the range net, clipped. Hold lanes. Maintain discipline. But even over comms, something in his tone acknowledged it, this wasn't in the packet. They pushed to the hostage room. The steel rig that should have been a bolted dummy was dragged crooked, footprints scoring dust where no actors should have stepped. Elias pointed 2 fingers, movement left. A shape crossed the blown light just long enough for a silhouette. Avery froze the team with a palm and shifted their entry, Ryan buttonhook, Elias anchor, Avery cross-control on a short 3. On go, they snapped in. 2 targets flipped, a red steel and a paper bad guy, standard. The third wasn't standard. A man in a dark hoodie flinched at the breach, then raised something that gleamed wrong for training. Avery fired first, tight 2 to center, 1 to stop the lift of his hand. He folded without theatrics. Silence hit heavy. Ryan's breath ragged in the mask. What the, security, Avery cut, already moving. She kept her muzzle on the floor toward the unknown and used her offhand to yank the hoodie back. Unfamiliar face, mid-30s, beard stubble, not Navy. Pocket, cheap radio with tape over the label, foreign make. On the window sill, wire residue and a scorch mark that didn't match range charges. Elias swept the corners again. We're not alone. Overhead, the catwalk rattled. Shaw's voice came tight. All teams freeze. Safety posture, magazines out, fingers high. Porter dropped into the alley with 2 instructors and a medic. His eyes hit the body, then the window, then Avery's stance like he expected it. You kept your lane. We kept each other alive, she said, flat. He didn't argue. They cleared the village by sectors, instructors pulling tape across alleys while base security flowed in. The rest of the class clustered near the breach point, whisper traveling faster than orders. Ryan stared at the hoodie and then at Avery like the gap between what he thought and what he'd seen was a ditch he might still fall into. You didn't even blink. Blinking doesn't move the needle, she said, checking Elias's shoulder where a splinter had cut fabric. Tiny, clean lines. You good? He nodded. Down hour turned into after action under a shade tarp. Porter grilled the sequence, who saw what, who called what, where discipline held, where it almost slipped. He gave no compliments, but he didn't flay them either. Shaw listened and wrote nothing, which meant he was writing everything in his head. When the AAR broke, rumors took over. Someone said outside actors, someone said red cell, someone said test. Ryan let the noise burn itself out, then sat on a crate across from Avery. You've done this before. She met his stare without heat. We all did it today. He shook his head once. Not like that. The afternoon tempo didn't ease. Porter sent them to a movement lane with sim rounds, tight corners, and shaped charges that thumped the chest without fire. The class moved cleaner than the morning, crisper calls, steadier feet. Avery didn't set the tone with speeches, she set it with pace. When a recruit overswung a corner, she bumped him a half step back. When Ryan tried to outrun an angle, she hooked his plate carrier and gave him the inch he needed to see the off-axis target. He shot, surprised, and didn't waste the lesson on pride. Evening fell fast. The air cooled, the base smell of salt and metal sharpening with the wind. In the barracks, talk ran in short lines. Elias taped his forearm and leaned back. If today was a test, it wasn't for us. Ryan glanced over. Felt like a test I already failed. Avery shook her head. You kept cadence. You adjusted. That's the only grade that counts. He didn't say thanks, but his shoulders dropped a notch. Lights dimmed. Pipes ticked. Outside, the Pacific kept the same steady drum. Avery let the noise settle, then wrote fast in her little book, lines short as breath, unknown hostile neutralized. Team adapted under live variance. Maddox, corrected when cued, speed manageable with purpose. Monroe, stable, anticipates. Cohesion, rising under pressure. Morale, wary but aligned. She capped the pen and stared at the dark. The cover was thinner now, stretched over a shape everyone could feel if not name. Somewhere above the beach, Shaw and Porter were deciding how much to say and when. Somewhere in the mock village, security marked blast residue that didn't belong to any training shelf. And somewhere between midnight and dawn, Avery accepted what the day had already written for her: the truth would come out soon, and when it did, she'd either earn their trust for real, or lose it for good. Dawn barely touched the water when Porter lined them up by the pad. Composite drill, he said. Insertion, hostage recovery, exfil to coast. Live fire protocols. No hand-holding. Shaw stood off to the side, hands behind his back, eyes giving nothing. The helicopter rotors shredded the morning quiet. They loaded fast. Ryan checked straps without being told. Elias counted heads and nodded once. Avery stared out the open door at the black-green line of the Pacific and felt the weight of the day slide into place. They dropped near Ravenpoint, boots sinking into cold weeds and cracked concrete. The facility sprawled like a bad memory, empty windows, rusted rail, gulls somewhere out of sight. Porter's voice hit over the net. Teams move. Ryan took point, Elias on rear, Avery second slot. First haul smelled like dust and old salt. Second split turned them toward a control room with half-dead monitors. Then the radio fuzzed into static and died. Ryan tapped his ear. Nets down. Elias lifted a palm. Footsteps clicked 2 corridors over, too steady for actors. Avery felt the hairs rise on her forearms. We're jammed, she said. Stay tight. A flash kicked from the mezzanine. Not a sim crack, but a sharp live pop that chewed concrete by Ryan's boot. He swore and dragged to cover. Elias returned a short, controlled burst to pin the angle. More shots came from a side catwalk. No target frames. No red steel. Just muzzle flashes and the dry paper sound of real debris falling. Avery didn't think about the cover anymore. She stepped into the slot leadership always fills, voice flat in the noise. Maddox, anchor left. Monroe, cut right. Cross on 3. I'm center. Ryan stared like he wanted to argue, then saw her posture and moved. 3, she said, and they broke. The catwalk gave them a slice. Avery shot 2, fast, to shut down the muzzle. Ryan moved with her without burning hot, checking corners, breathing even. Elias fed calls with single words: window, low, clear, never crowding. They reached the control room. On the floor, a tech in a base vest bled from the thigh, white-knuckled around a tourniquet half-tied. Avery dropped, cranked it 2 turns, felt the pulse dampen, and pushed him a radio. If you've got command on a clean channel, call it, she said. He shook his head. Nothing but static. The stairwell shuddered with bootfall. More of them, spreading, their timing like they trained together. Avery scanned the room. Old fuel drums by the pier door. A gull-gray service boat half-moored, bobbing against fenders. She set the line in her own head and spoke it so the team could step inside it. We don't hold this building. We move through. Maddox front. Monroe rear. Short bounds. Don't outrun your angles. Ryan looked at her hard. Who put you in charge? The words came out like habit, not fight. Avery held his stare. I did. Now move. He moved. They pushed the passage like a zipper, open a tooth, close a tooth, keep the seam from splitting. Rounds sparked off corrugated sheet. Elias flinched once, then drove back a short burst and reset his feet. Ryan's cadence was clean now, not proving anything, just placing shots where they needed to go. They hit the pier door and felt the wind slam their faces, salt and smoke riding it. 3 figures rushed the angle with mismatched gear and real eyes. Avery cut the first, Ryan the second. The third tripped a loose coil and fell hard against the bollard. No time to sift loyalties. At the hinge, Avery made the call that would stick. We're not letting them regroup. She grabbed a charge from the breech kit, hands moving like muscle memory, and looked at Ryan. Rig the drum and cut the moor. On my mark, we blow, jump, and ride that boat out. He blinked once, then knelt to wire the drum, fingers steady for the first time since day one. Elias covered, talking through breath. 2 on the mez. 1 low door. Avery leaned into the doorway, fired 2 to keep heads down, then snapped back to the team. Mark. The drum went. The pier bucked, a slab of air punching their chests. Water jumped and hammered down. They ran into the blast shadow and threw themselves into the boat, Avery last, rolling to the console with one hand still on her rifle. Round stitched water behind them. Ryan threw the line and hit the starter. The engine coughed once, then caught. Elias pushed off the rail with his boot and dropped to a crouch. South Channel. South Channel, Avery said, already turning the wheel. They squirted into open water and rode the chop, Ravenpoint shrinking behind a smear of smoke and bent rail. No cheers. No hands in the air. Just the sound of an engine and 3 breaths trying to find a pace again. Ryan finally looked at her and said it straight. You're not a recruit. Avery kept her eyes on the swell. The day had already decided. Commander Avery Caldwell, Navy, she said. I was sent in to evaluate you under pressure. Elias didn't flinch. Ryan took a beat, jaw working. You could have said that sooner. If I had, you would have chased my rank instead of your job, she said. What you did in there, you did because you could, not because I told you to. They cleared the headland and cut engine to idle, hidden by the curve of rock. The radio sputtered a scrap of life. Porter's voice, small but there, all units, status. Avery keyed. Ravenpoint compromised. Unknown hostiles neutralized. Casualty stabilized. Team moving to safe water. A long second, then another voice, Shaw, came with a line she'd remember. Copy, Commander. Bring them home. Ryan shut his eyes and let out air he'd been holding since the first shot. Elias checked the tourniquet again and nodded. The truth was out. The cover was gone. What sat in its place wasn't shiny or clean. It was heavier and real, the kind that either breaks a team or forges it. Avery looked at the 2 men across from her and saw which way the metal had bent toward staying together. Back inside Fort Breakwater, the boat still ticking as it cooled, Medical grabbed the wounded tech and rolled him toward the infirmary. Porter met them on the pier with a face that said he'd expected a mess and got one. Shaw was 2 steps behind, headset off, eyes on Avery. Status. Ravenpoint compromised. Unknown shooters neutralized. Comms jammed on site. We improvised exfil by water. 1 base tech stabilized. Shaw held her stare and gave a single nod. Porter's jaw flexed. You blew a section of government pier. I blew a kill box, Avery said. And kept your recruits alive. He didn't argue the second part. They moved to the small briefing room off Echo 9, the one with the metal table and the old map stuck behind glass. The rest of the class sat on benches outside, silent, watching the 3 of them through the doorway like the answer key was finally getting handed out. Ryan and Elias stood in the back, not at parade rest, not slouching either, just there. Shaw closed the door. "You're done undercover," he said. "We say it out loud now." Porter folded his arms. "Say the rest too." Avery stepped forward. "I'm Commander Avery Caldwell. I was embedded to evaluate leadership under real pressure. The sabotage you saw in the village wasn't on the schedule. Ravenpoint wasn't either. Someone either added a red cell without telling us or we had an outside breach." Porter shot back, flat. "Or you finally showed what you were always here to show, how you handle a team when the script goes sideways." It landed halfway between praise and an accusation. Shaw cut through. "The point is the team handled it. The question is what's next." A petty officer slid in with a hard case, popped it on the table. Inside, a small encrypted drive and a paper packet stamped with a classification block. "Pulled from Ravenpoint's control bay before the jam hit," he said. "Looks like system keys." Avery looked from the case to Porter. "That site was supposed to be cold." Porter's face didn't change. "Supposed to be." Ryan spoke for the first time. "If we're done pretending it's a classroom, say the job so we stop guessing." Shaw nodded at Avery. "Your call, Commander." She took it without fanfare. "We go back in clean, off the books. Limited footprint. Secure the data path, confirm no second team, pull logs, and leave nothing someone can use again. Porter coordinates perimeter with base security. I'll take a 3-man element inside. Maddox, Monroe, with me." Porter lifted his chin. "You want the ones who just learned they were lied to." "I want the ones who already adjusted under fire," she said. Ryan didn't hide the hit. He also didn't hesitate. "When do we step?" 20, Avery said. They geared in silence. No pep talk. Ryan checked Elias's sling and tightened a buckle. Elias returned the favor, pulling Ryan's plate strap snug. Small things, done without being asked. On the ride over in a low-noise van, Avery laid the plan in 10 sentences, all verbs and corners. Entry at service hatch. Elias on technical, pull cam loops, scrape the local log, bag what's not ours. Ryan on forward security. Avery on control room sweep and chain of custody. No hero work. No dragouts. Ravenpoint was ash and wind and the stink of wet concrete cooling after the blast. Security tape fluttered where the pier used to be. They slipped the hatch and moved in. The silence inside felt earned. Elias peeled to a terminal and got to work, fingers quick, eyes steady. Ryan held the junction, head on a swivel, breath even. Avery walked the control room the way a mechanic listens to an engine. Scorch mark on a sill. Tool dragged near a panel that shouldn't have been opened. A cheap radio battery wedged under a console like someone dropped it when the shooting started. She bagged it all. Elias whispered, "Got it." Logs show a local account that shouldn't exist. Last access synced with the jam. External IP bounces through 3 hops, all dirt. Someone with a badge opened the door. Ryan didn't look away from the hull. Inside hand. Avery keyed her mic to Shaw. "We've got proof of internal authorization used for the breach and a scrub trail. We're pulling the drive and closing shop." Shaw's voice came back calm. "Roger. On your exfil." They left Ravenpoint cleaner than they found it, terminals dead, cameras pulled, a note to whoever tried again that nothing easy remained. Back at base, Shaw took the bag and the drive, then did something Porter didn't expect. He turned to the benches and spoke to the class. "You all saw what it looks like when plans fail and people don't. You want to wear a trident, you take that as the standard." Porter cleared his throat. Caldwell's team made calls that cut property and saved lives. You don't get both on the same receipt. You pick right. The room shifted. The edge went out of the air. Someone exhaled. A few looked at Avery like she'd just stepped out of a fog. Ryan stepped forward, not making it a speech. You put us in the water when we couldn't swim it yet, ma'am. We learned. That's the job. Elias added, we're better for it. Avery didn't soften much, but she nodded once. You kept your lanes. You watched each other. That's what matters. Night stretched over Fort Breakwater. The Pacific hit the shore in its old rhythm. The barracks felt different, quieter, not from exhaustion but from things settling into place. Ryan sat on his bunk and rolled the lacrosse ball under his foot like always, then tossed it to Elias without looking, and Elias caught it one-handed, also like always. Avery stepped outside for air. Porter joined her, hands in pockets. He didn't apologize. He didn't need to. Tomorrow's eval will be simpler, he said. Range, NAV, team lanes. The hard part already happened. Avery eyed the dark water. The hard part is getting them to trust themselves when nobody's watching. Porter grunted, which, from him, was agreement. When she went back in, a few heads lifted, then dropped. No salute. No ceremony. Just a new frame around the same work. The reveal had landed. The team was bent, not broken, and starting to hold its new shape. In the morning, the map would point somewhere else, but the rule stayed the same: move with purpose, keep each other alive, finish what you start. The noise had lowered. The path forward was simple. Not easy, simple. The morning broke clean and cool, the kind of air that stings a little and clears the head. Porter had them on the range first, more to set cadence than to test anything new. Targets slid left and right. Wind pushed rounds just enough to punish sloppy breath. Ryan settled in and didn't chase the sights. He let them come to him and pressed when they should break. Elias ran drills like a metronome. Avery watched the line, not to score, but to mark composure. No chatter. No strut. Just work done at the right pace. Nav followed, mapless routes across scrub and broken trail. Porter sprinkled dead space and small traps to catch impatience. The class moved in pairs. Ryan and Elias flowed without over-talking it. One pointed, the other confirmed. When a washout forced a detour, they didn't force the map to their will, they adjusted to the ground. A small thing, but the kind that decides whether you finish tired or fail dumb. Avery took it in and kept walking. Back at Echo 9, Shaw pulled them into the yard for team lanes, short sprints between cover, casualty drags, friction points where teams tend to argue. They didn't. The arguments had burned out of them. Porter watched a recruit hesitate on a handoff. Ryan stepped in, took the weight for 2 strides, then placed it back with a nod. No hero pose, no lecture. Elias caught Avery's eye once and smiled the smallest smile a man can manage while sucking wind. She let the corner of her mouth move a millimeter. It was enough. After chow, Shaw called the class to the flagpole. No speeches on the board, no falderall, just the man's voice and the wind moving the rope against the halyard. You came for a crucible and got a forge, he said. You were evaluated by an instructor, by the ocean, by your own lungs. And you were evaluated by someone you didn't expect. He paused and turned slightly. Commander Caldwell. The line straightened, not from fear but from understanding. Avery stepped forward, boots scuffing gravel. She didn't inflate the moment. You don't need a story, she said. You need a standard. Keep your lane. Keep your head. Keep each other. That's it. Porter cleared his throat. Results, he said, and read names that would move forward. Not all did. The ones who didn't held their faces still and shook hands without flinching. That matters too. Ryan's name came. He didn't grin, just let out a breath. Elias's came and he looked down once, then up. When Shaw finished, the yard stayed quiet. Success doesn't always sound like cheering. Sometimes it sounds like a rope tapping a pole and boots shifting on sand. In the soft gap after the list, Ryan stepped to Avery. He didn't try to unpack everything. "Ma'am," he said. "You were right about the job." She raised an eyebrow. "Which part?" "All of it," he said. "Especially the part where we trust the work and not the noise." He held her gaze a beat and added, lower, "Thanks for the shove when I needed it." "You shoved yourself," she said. "I just kept you from running off a cliff." Elias drifted in, easy as ever. "So what now?" Avery looked at both of them. "Now you train harder. And when it gets messy again, and it will, you keep the simple things simple." Afternoon brought cleanup and the kind of silence that means people are thinking ahead. Gear got squared away. Blisters got taped for the last time this cycle. The horizon went bright and flat. Ryan tossed the lacrosse ball once, then pocketed it like a token he no longer needed. Elias wrote a short note on a scrap, folded it, and tucked it into a boot where only he'd ever find it again. Porter passed by Avery as she stood near the surf and didn't stop. "You dragged them through and didn't break them," he said. "That'll do." In his mouth, that was high praise. Shaw joined a minute later, hands behind his back. "About Ravenpoint," he said. "We'll finish the audit. You did the part only you could do." Avery nodded. They did the part that mattered. Dusk found the class on the steps of the barracks without being told. No formation. Just bodies lined up by habit, shoulders touching, nothing to prove. The ocean kept time. If there was a lesson here, it wasn't about secrecy or tricks. It was about the plain math of endurance: breathe right, move right, think right, repeat. And it was about the math you do for someone else: take a strap, give a cue, set a pace that saves a team. Titles help in rooms. They don't help in water. Trust does. When the lights inside flicked on, the faces turned gold. Avery took one last look at the line, the arrogance ground into maturity, the quiet sharpened into leadership, the raw edges made useful, and let herself feel a small, private satisfaction. She had come to measure. She had stayed to build. The cover was gone. The respect wasn't borrowed from rank anymore, it was paid for in cold lungs, steady hands, and the decision to keep moving when panic invited them to stop. She pushed off the rail and headed in. Tomorrow would belong to other schedules and other names, to new lanes and fresh mistakes. But tonight belonged to a simple truth that didn't need ceremony: they had become the kind of people who finish. Ryan lifted 2 fingers in a small salute, informal and real. Elias gave a nod that said more than words. Avery returned both with a look that landed like a handshake. Then the door swung shut, the room filled with the sound of boots and low voices, and the base settled into its night rhythm. Out on the Silverstrand, waves erased the day's footprints and made room for whatever came next. The work would start again at first light. It always does. And they would be there, leaner, quieter, more exact, ready to keep their lanes, keep their heads, and keep each other. That's the story and the standard, in that order.